vital intelligence as to how to enter the palace unobserved. They also described the habits of the Pope and, more importantly, his guards. It was thanks to their intelligence that Radet knew that the palace sentries retired at 2 o'clock in the morning. The plan the general devised was bold and bore many of the hallmarks of Napoleonic strategy. During the Empire, the French had divided their army into smaller units that would march swiftly on separate roads and then converge on the enemy's position to destroy him. This was known as the corps d'armée system. Radet hoped to achieve a similar outcome on a smaller scale. As in a battle, he would divide his forces into 3 detachments, which would take the papal palace in a pincer movement. Radet would personally lead 30 veterans onto the roof of the palace and then stealthily enter the main courtyard. His deputy, Colonel Siri, would head a similar contingent that would access the gardens and, through an open window, gain entry into the servants' quarters. Both groups would then rendezvous inside the palace and open the main gates leading to the Piazza de Montecavallo, where the remaining forces would join them for the final assault. The critical phase would be to disarm and neutralize the Swiss Guard before they could raise the alarm. If Radet's careful plan proved successful, the Pope and his court would be taken by surprise and spirited away in carriages in the dead of night before anybody realized what had occurred. All seemed to start according to plan. At 2:30 a.m., over 700 troops assembled outside Pius VII's summer residence. Colonel Siri scaled the walls of the gardens, but he and his men got lost in the vast papal gardens and wasted valuable time. The darkness and obstacles, in the shape of the fine collection of exotic plants, made stealthy movement nearly impossible, and Siri's men could not identify the lighted window which a spy inside the Quirinal had promised to leave open. Meanwhile, Radet, a man of deeds, not words, had told his men that he would be the first to climb up to the palace roof, just under 30 feet high. Long scaling ladders had been requisitioned for this purpose. Radet ascended the ladder with grim determination, followed by his loyal gendarmes, but he immediately suffered an almost fatal setback. His men had forgotten to check the sturdiness of the scaling ladders and whether they could carry the weight of 30 brawny gendarmes. Radet had almost reached the roof when the ladder snapped in half and he fell indecorously to the ground. The sound of the ladder breaking and the men shouting awoke the inhabitants of the palace. Very soon, cries of "Treason! To arms! Treason!" were heard. Candlelight started to flicker in the windows of the Quirinal. To make matters worse, the sentries began tolling the palace bell, and all the churches of Rome responded in kind. The element of surprise had been squandered. Not a man to be discouraged, the now rather disheveled Radet, his hat perched crookedly on his head, made his way to the main palace gate with an axe, and proceeded to deal violent blows to the wooden doors. In the previous months, however, the prefect of the papal household had taken the wise precaution of having both the locks and the wooden gates reinforced in preparation for a likely incursion. Radet, despite his great physical strength, did not get very far, and only succeeded in making himself sweaty and breathless. One historian has described him at this moment looking more like a poacher than an officer. Nearing collapse from exhaustion, the general ceased his assault. He could hear sounds from the interior of the Quirinal. Colonel Siri, despite an unpromising start, had eventually found his way inside the palace. He now unbolted the gates, and the imperial forces flooded into the staterooms. They were soon met by the Swiss Guard in full battle order, their armor and halberds glistening in the candlelight. This was a standoff the French had wanted to avoid. Any violence or shedding of blood in the attempt to kidnap Pius VII would have destroyed the empire's already fragile reputation with Catholic Europe. The imperial officers demanded that the Swiss Guard surrender. To the Franco-Neapolitan soldiers' relief, the sound of the heavy halberds crashing down to the ground was a clear sign that there was not going to be a fight. Since the invasion of his states,